Hands on the hood. Now. The command cut through the night like a blade. Marcus Ellison froze mid-step, his hand still reaching for the door handle of his black Ford truck. Across from him, Tiana Brooks stiffened, her laughter dying in her throat. Just seconds earlier, they had walked out of Delgado's grill, bellies full of tacos, still teasing each other about who could handle more spice. But the glow of a streetlight now revealed something darker. Officer Trent Malloy, broad-shouldered, buzz-cut, his hand resting possessively on the grip of his holstered weapon. His tone wasn't a request. It was a sentence. Marcus turned slowly, steady like the soldier he had been trained to be. "Something wrong, officer?" he asked, his voice even, calm, respectful. Years of discipline kept his tone steady, but his chest tightened. He had heard that voice before, in war zones from men who believed control came only through intimidation. Malloy's eyes flicked toward the truck, then back at them. "Vehicle looks suspicious. Whose is it?" Marcus straightened, his answer firm. "It's mine. Registration and insurance are in the glove box. I can show you right now." He didn't reach. He knew better. "Step away from the vehicle. Both of you. Hands where I can see them." The order cracked through the quiet street. Tiana crossed her arms, her jaw set. "We just had dinner. We're not doing anything wrong." But Malloy was already closing the distance. Flashlight raised, though the streetlight made it unnecessary. He shined the beam directly into Marcus's face, ignoring his calm explanation. "Did I stutter?" "Hands on the hood." Marcus exchanged a quick glance with Tiana. It wasn't fear that passed between them. It was recognition. They had both seen this before. Not here, not home, but overseas, when power tilted unfairly and the only choice was compliance or escalation. Marcus raised his hands and placed them on the cool metal of his truck. Tiana followed, her expression tight with disbelief. Cold steel cuffs snapped shut. The sound echoed louder than the late-night traffic. A couple walking their dog stopped mid-step, staring. Someone inside the restaurant pressed their face against the glass, phone in hand, recording. The humiliation stung sharper than the cuffs. Marcus swallowed it down. "Officer, there's no need for this. I can show you my military ID. We've done nothing wrong." Malloy leaned close, his smirk wide and venomous. "Military ID, huh? And I'm the mayor of San Diego. Save it." He shoved Marcus upright, his grip firm on the cuffs. Tiana's voice was steady but burned with anger. "This is harassment. You don't even have a reason." Malloy's eyes gleamed. "I don't need a reason. My report will have plenty." The back seat of the patrol car swallowed them in tinted glass and silence. The city lights blurred, red and blue reflections flickering across their faces. Marcus leaned back, jaw tight, staring at the roof. No words passed between him and Tiana. They didn't need them. Both knew this wasn't about law. This was about power. And tonight, power had them in chains. But the fight wouldn't stay on the street. It was headed somewhere Malloy never expected. Into a courtroom where truth, once revealed, could topple even the strongest badge. The clang of the cell door echoed like a gunshot. Marcus and Tiana stood in silence, the sound of the bolt sliding home vibrating through the concrete walls. Officer Malloy lingered on the other side, his grin smug, his badge catching the dim hallway light. "Get comfortable," he sneered. "Tomorrow you'll have your chance to explain yourselves. Let's see how far those Navy titles get you then." His boots clicked against the tile as he walked away, leaving them in the kind of silence that pressed heavy on the chest. Tiana sat down on the cold steel bench, her wrists still marked from the cuffs. "I've been shot at in Afghanistan," she said, her voice low, bitter. "But I never thought I'd be thrown in a cell for eating dinner at home." Marcus didn't answer right away. He leaned against the wall, arms folded, his breathing controlled, eyes fixed on nothing. When he finally spoke, it was slow and deliberate. "This isn't about dinner. It's about him. Malloy thinks his badge makes him untouchable." Across the station, Malloy was hunched over a desk, typing quickly. "Resisted arrest," he muttered as his fingers slammed the keys. "Suspicious vehicle. Disorderly conduct." He spoke each lie like it was scripture, stapling together a report that painted Marcus and Tiana as aggressors. Another officer passed the door, pausing to frown. "You sure about this, Malloy? They didn't look like troublemakers." Malloy smirked without looking up. "Doesn't matter. My word goes farther than theirs. Judge won't question it. Back in the cell, Tiana leaned forward, her elbows on her knees. "You feel that?" she whispered. Marcus turned his head slightly. "Feel what?" "That smug energy floating around the building. He's in there writing our future right now, and tomorrow morning it'll be gospel." Marcus's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed calm. "Funny thing about lies. They stack up like walls. But it only takes one brick of truth to bring them down." The hours crawled. Malloy passed the cell once, flashing his grin as if daring them to speak. Tiana stared him down, her voice cutting through the silence. "You should be more worried about how far your lies will get you." For just a moment, his smirk faltered. Then it returned, wider than before, and he walked on. Dawn crept in through the narrow window, pale light spilling across the cell floor. Marcus and Tiana hadn't slept. The sound of keys rattling announced Malloy's return. He tapped the bars with a folder thick with paper. "Big day ahead," he said, voice dripping with mockery. "Hope you've got a good speech ready." Marcus rose slowly, his eyes locked on Malloy's. "We don't need a speech," he said quietly. "We've got the truth." Malloy's grin froze for half a heartbeat before snapping back in place. "We'll see," he muttered, turning on his heel. But he didn't know what waited for him in that courtroom. He didn't know whose shadow would soon walk through those doors. The heavy oak doors creaked open, and the sound rolled through the courtroom like thunder. Every head turned. Marcus and Tiana, shackled at the wrists and dressed in orange, were led to the defense table. Their uniforms were gone, stripped away, leaving them looking like any other defendants. Marcus walked tall, shoulders square, his calm unbroken. Tiana's eyes burned with quiet defiance, every step a refusal to bow. At the prosecution's table, Officer Malloy adjusted his badge with exaggerated care. His uniform was spotless, his shoes polished until they reflected the light. He stood tall, nodding to a couple of reporters scribbling notes as if he'd already won. When his eyes met Marcus's, he smirked, tapping the folder in front of him, the folder filled with his carefully crafted lies. Judge Sloan entered, her black robe flowing as she took her seat. Her gavel struck once. "Court is in session." The room settled into silence, broken only by the shuffle of papers and the scratching of pens. The air felt charged, tense, as if everyone knew something was about to snap. Malloy was called first. He walked to the stand with the swagger of a man convinced of his victory. His voice was smooth, rehearsed, dripping with confidence. The suspects were uncooperative. They resisted arrest. Their vehicle matched the description of a stolen one reported earlier. "My actions were within procedure. I feared for my safety." Each word was chosen with precision, each pause timed to sway the judge and audience. He spoke like an actor on stage, certain of applause. Marcus and Tiana listened in silence, their jaws tight. To the gallery, the story sounded believable. A decorated officer's word against two supposed suspects. Malloy's lies painted them as threats, and the weight of his badge pressed heavy on every syllable. The reporters scribbled faster. The spectators murmured. For a moment, it seemed the scales had already tipped against them. When Malloy finished, he leaned back in the witness chair, his smirk returning. He looked at Marcus and Tiana like a man daring them to try to claw their way out of the hole he'd dug. The judge turned her sharp gaze toward the defense table. "Defendants, you may respond." Marcus rose slowly. The clink of chains filled the silence. He stood tall, his voice steady, cutting through the tension like a blade. "Your Honor, everything you just heard is false. We complied with every order. We offered identification. We resisted nothing. We are not criminals." His words carried no theatrics, no exaggeration, only a calm certainty that made people lean forward to listen. A ripple of murmurs passed through the room. Malloy laughed under his breath loud enough for everyone to hear. "And I suppose you're going to claim you're heroes, too. Maybe Navy SEALs, right?" Tiana rose beside Marcus, her chains rattling. Her voice was sharp, commanding. "Not heroes, sailors. We've served this country overseas. We've risked our lives more times than you can imagine. And now we stand here accused of resisting arrest when all we resisted was your arrogance." The room erupted in whispers, the tension rising. Judge Sloan's gavel struck twice. "Order." But before the noise could fully die, the doors at the back of the courtroom opened again. The sound was soft, but it froze the air. A tall figure stepped inside, his uniform gleaming. ribbons and medals glinting under the lights. Admiral Jonathan Reeves, the highest-ranking officer in the room, and he wasn't there to watch silently. The gallery hushed the moment Admiral Reeves entered, his polished shoes echoing on the marble floor. He walked with the kind of authority that didn't need to be announced, straight-backed, calm, but carrying the weight of every mission, every decision, every life he had commanded. His dress uniform was immaculate, rows of ribbons across his chest glinting under the fluorescent lights. Even Judge Sloan, known for her stone-cold demeanor, leaned forward slightly, acknowledging the gravity of his presence. Malloy's smirk faltered for the first time. He sat rigid in the witness chair, his hand twitching near the folder of his report. His eyes flicked from Reeves to the judge, then back to Marcus and Tiana. They both stood taller, their chains suddenly not shackles but symbols of endurance. Admiral Reeves stopped at the defense table, placing a thick folder down with deliberate care. His voice was deep, steady, and carried across the courtroom with effortless power. Your Honor, I am Admiral Jonathan Reeves, commander of the Naval Special Warfare Command. These two defendants are not criminals. They are my sailors, Lieutenant Commander Marcus Ellison and Petty Officer First Class Tiana Brooks. Their records speak louder than lies, and I am here to ensure those records are heard. A ripple went through the gallery. Reporters scrambled, pens scratching furiously, cameras clicking. Even the bailiffs glanced at each other, the weight of the moment heavy in the air. Judge Sloan raised her hand for silence. Admiral Reeves, this court was not informed of your presence. Reeves inclined his head slightly, unshaken. I came as soon as I heard what was happening here. I could not, in good conscience, remain silent while two of the Navy's finest had their honor smeared. He slid the folder toward the judge. Inside are their commendations, deployment records, mission citations. These are not hot-headed troublemakers. These are disciplined warriors who have defended this nation with their lives. Malloy shot up from his chair, his voice sharp, desperate. Your Honor, with all due respect, military service doesn't excuse resisting arrest. This has nothing to do with their records. Reeves turned his head slowly, fixing Malloy with a gaze so sharp it seemed to pin him to his seat. No one here is asking for an excuse, Officer Malloy. What I am asking for is truth. And truth, as I understand it, is not something that bends to arrogance. The gallery gasped. The judge's eyes flicked between Reeves and Malloy, her expression unreadable but her attention unmistakably focused on the cracks forming in Malloy's confidence. Your Honor, Reeves continued, calm but unyielding, Marcus Ellison has saved lives on the battlefield without firing a shot, choosing de-escalation over violence. Tiana Brooks has stood between her team and death more times than I can count. And yet we are to believe they suddenly lost control over a simple traffic stop after dinner. I will not stand by while this courtroom is turned into a stage for falsehood. Marcus and Tiana exchanged a glance. For the first time since their arrest, they felt the tide begin to shift. The video monitor flickered to life as the bailiff connected the restaurant's security footage to the courtroom screen. Every head in the gallery turned, the buzz of whispers dying into an uneasy silence. Judge Sloan's gavel tapped once. Proceed. The grainy black-and-white footage rolled. There they were, Marcus and Tiana stepping out of Delgado's grill, laughing lightly, shoulders relaxed. The timestamp matched the night of the arrest. Then Malloy appeared from the corner of the frame, posture aggressive, hand already hovering near his holster. The audio wasn't clear, but the body language told the story. Marcus raised his hands calmly, reaching for his wallet. Tiana placed her hands where they could be seen. Malloy shoved Marcus against the truck, cuffing him roughly while another officer held Tiana, snapping restraints around her wrists despite her compliance. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Reporters leaned forward, scribbling furiously. Judge Sloan's eyes narrowed as she leaned closer to the screen. Play it again, the footage repeated. Calm compliance. Forceful arrest. No sign of resistance. No sign of aggression. Just obedience met with humiliation. Malloy shifted in his chair, his face pale now, sweat glistening at his temple. That video doesn't capture everything, he blurted out. The angle. It doesn't show their tone, their attitude. They were hostile. Admiral Reeves raised an eyebrow, his voice low but slicing through the courtroom like steel. Hostile? Because they spoke? Because they didn't cower? That's your definition of resistance? Malloy's jaw clenched, his eyes darting toward the judge, searching for support. But Judge Sloane's gaze was fixed squarely on him. "Officer Malloy," she said evenly, "your report claims they resisted, that they were aggressive, and that they posed a threat. I see none of that here. Would you care to explain?" Malloy fumbled with his folder, flipping pages he no longer seemed to recognize. "Reports. Reports are interpretations, Your Honor. Not every detail can be seen on camera. Interpretations?" Reeves repeated, his tone sharpening. "Or inventions?" The gallery erupted in murmurs. A reporter whispered loudly enough to be heard, "This is going to blow wide open." Marcus finally rose from his seat, chains clinking but his voice calm and steady. "Your Honor, what you just saw is what happened. No more, no less." We complied. We identified ourselves. We were treated like criminals for eating dinner. And if this can happen to us, active duty military personnel, imagine what happens to civilians with no one to speak for them. The silence that followed was heavier than any outburst. Judge Sloane studied Marcus, then Tiana, then turned back to Malloy. Her face was unreadable, but the shift in the room was undeniable. Malloy's confidence cracked further. His smirk was gone, replaced by clenched fists and a thin sheen of panic. He had built his story on the certainty that no one would question his word. But the video had spoken louder than his lies. The gavel struck once, sharp as a gunshot, silencing the buzzing gallery. Judge Sloane's voice was steady, but every word carried weight. "Officer Malloy, this court takes integrity seriously. What I see here is a report that contradicts not only the defendant's testimony, but now video evidence as well." She paused, letting the tension stretch. "This is no longer about two individuals accused of resisting arrest. This is about whether an officer of the law fabricated charges." Malloy shot up from his chair, his face flushed red, veins bulging at his temples. "With respect, Your Honor, I followed procedure. I acted in good faith. These two were suspicious. Their behavior, their tone, it was threatening. Threatening." Marcus rose too, his hands still cuffed in front of him. He didn't shout, didn't sneer. His voice was low, controlled, like a soldier delivering orders under fire. "The only threat that night came from you. You didn't see two citizens. You didn't see two veterans. You saw what you wanted to see. And you decided that was enough." Gasps rippled across the courtroom. Tiana stood beside him, her chin lifted. "We've been shot at, ambushed, hunted in deserts and seas. We didn't break then, and we're not breaking now. If you call that threatening, maybe you're the one who doesn't belong in uniform." The gallery erupted, reporters scribbling furiously. Judge Sloane banged her gavel again, her face tightening. "Order! I will have order!" Admiral Reeves stepped forward, his medals catching the light. His tone was calm but unyielding. "Your Honor, if I may." He turned toward the bench, then toward Malloy. "These two have risked their lives countless times for this country. They've stood in the line of fire so people like Officer Malloy can sleep safely at night. And yet, here they are, dragged into court in chains for no crime other than being seen by the wrong man with the wrong kind of arrogance." The weight of his words landed heavy. Even the stenographer paused for a beat before catching up. Malloy shook his head, his voice rising in desperation. "You people don't understand. I'm the one who protects these streets. Me, not them. Without officers like me, chaos takes over. I was doing my job." Reeves stepped closer, his voice sharp as a blade. "No, you were abusing your badge. And tonight, your job isn't to protect the streets. It's to answer for the lies you wrote on paper." Judge Sloane leaned forward, her eyes narrowing at Malloy. "Officer, the court has seen enough. You will remain for questioning under oath. Bailiff, secure him." The bailiff moved toward Malloy. For the first time, the arrogant officer stepped back, his mouth opening in protest. The smug grin he had worn hours earlier was gone, replaced by panic. The chains he once reveled in placing on others were now close to his own wrists. The gallery erupted again, half in shock, half in relief. Marcus and Tiana exchanged a look, silent, steady, unbroken. For the first time since the arrest, the balance of power had shifted. Malloy's boots scraped against the polished courtroom floor as the bailiff guided him toward the witness stand. The officer who once barked orders with unchecked confidence now looked cornered, his face pale under the weight of the crowd's eyes. He sat, his badge gleaming on his chest like a cruel reminder of the authority he'd twisted, and raised his right hand to swear in. For the first time, his voice cracked. "I swear to tell the truth." Judge Sloane's gaze was fixed, unwavering. "Officer Malloy, your report describes two individuals resisting, raising their voices, and displaying suspicious behavior. The footage shown to this court contradicts every word. Explain." Malloy's throat bobbed as he swallowed hard. His hands fidgeted in his lap. Cameras don't capture everything. Angles, sound, what you don't see is the tension, the way they looked at me. You learn to spot danger. It was instinct. Marcus leaned forward at the defense table, his voice calm but heavy with conviction. Instinct? Is that what you call humiliation? Is that what you call lying to destroy the names of two people who've spent their lives serving their country? His words didn't rise in anger. They fell like stones, unshakable. Tiana's voice followed, steady and sharp. "You didn't arrest us because we were dangerous. You arrested us because you thought you could, because you believed nobody would question your word. That's not instinct, Officer Malloy. That's arrogance," the gallery murmured, the sound of agreement growing like a tide. Admiral Reeves stood behind them, his towering presence making Malloy look smaller by the second. "Your Honor," Reeves said, addressing the bench, "I've led teams into combat zones where trust meant life or death. I know the difference between a threat and a soldier doing their job. What I see here isn't law enforcement, it's abuse of power." Malloy's face flushed red. He leaned into the microphone, his voice rising, frantic now. "You don't understand. People respect the badge because they fear it. That's how order is kept. You start doubting officers, you lose control of the streets." Judge Sloane's voice cut like ice. "Respect isn't built on fear, Officer Malloy. It's built on trust. And right now, you've shattered that trust in this courtroom." She turned to the bailiff. "Remove his badge." Gasps filled the room as the bailiff stepped forward. Malloy jerked back instinctively, his hand brushing the badge as if it were his lifeline. But it was pried from his chest, leaving behind an empty patch of cloth. His eyes darted around the courtroom, searching for an ally but found only silence, or worse, the eyes of people who once looked past him now seeing him clearly for what he was. Marcus and Tiana watched, not with glee, but with the weary calm of people who had fought battles bigger than themselves. For them, this wasn't victory, it was survival. Judge Sloane spoke once more. "This court will not tolerate corruption under the guise of authority. Officer Malloy, you will face charges for false reporting, abuse of power, and perjury." Her gavel struck, final and loud. The gallery erupted, cameras flashing, reporters shouting questions. Malloy slumped in his chair, the weight of his downfall pressing him into silence. Marcus glanced at Tiana, their eyes meeting with a quiet understanding. The fight wasn't just theirs anymore. It belonged to everyone watching. The courthouse doors swung open, and Marcus and Tiana stepped out into the sunlight, their wrists finally free of chains, their dignity no longer bound by Malloy's lies. The crowd outside erupted in shouts and flashes of cameras, reporters pushing microphones forward, their voices colliding into a storm of questions. But Marcus didn't rush. He paused at the top of the courthouse steps, letting the light hit his face, his chest rising as though he were breathing free air for the first time in years. One reporter shouted louder than the others. "Lieutenant Commander Ellison, Petty Officer Brooks, what does justice feel like after what you've endured?" Marcus raised his head, his eyes calm, his voice carrying over the noise. "It feels like truth finally had its day. But this isn't just about us. Tonight we go home. Too many never get that chance." Tiana stepped beside him, her tone steady and piercing. "We survived war zones where danger was expected. But what happened here at home, that's the fight people don't see. Too many voices silenced. Too many stories buried because someone thought a badge made them untouchable. Let this prove something. Power doesn't make you right, and silence doesn't make you safe." The Admiral, standing a step behind them, placed his hand firmly on their shoulders. His presence said what words couldn't. They weren't alone, and their fight was now part of something greater. Reporters shouted again, but Marcus lifted his hand gently and the noise softened. If you're listening, remember this. The truth is a weapon, stronger than lies, stronger than fear. But it only works when we use it. Stand for it, speak it, protect it, even when it costs you everything. Especially then. Tiana leaned into the microphones one last time, her voice turning from soldier to witness, from witness to leader. If this story moved you, don't just scroll past. Share it, tell it. Because every share, every word spoken makes it harder for lies to live in the dark. Subscribe to this channel. Be part of a community that chooses truth over silence, dignity over arrogance, and courage over fear. We'll keep telling the stories they want hidden, but only if you stand with us. The crowd roared, cameras flashing like lightning, capturing a moment that would spread far beyond San Diego. And as Marcus and Tiana descended the courthouse steps side by side, the weight they carried didn't vanish. It transformed. Their scars had become a voice, their pain a warning, their survival a lesson. In the distance, Malloy was led away, no longer a shadow of authority but a cautionary tale. The badge he once flaunted was gone, replaced by the cold steel of accountability. Marcus turned once more to the cameras, his final words crisp, steady, unforgettable. No one is untouchable, not with the truth, not when we stand together. So if you believe in justice, subscribe now. Share this story. Be the voice someone else is waiting for.